Hey everyone, welcome to Menace Radio on MAGA 1. This is my first week on the new station, so make sure you go over and show some love over at the Facebook page under MAGA 1 Radio. You can find the links on the website. There's also links to Twitter, and check us out. I have a great show put together today. A little bit later, I'm going to be speaking with Stephen Baum about his new magazine, Tape Leak. But first, let's go over some of this week's headlines. Teen Vogue continues to go off of the deep end. Now, you may remember some of their recent articles, such as How Trump is Gaslighting America and Anal Sex, What You Need to Know, because teaching kids about anal sex is just so progressive. Their latest article is titled Cultural Appropriation May Soon Become Illegal Thanks to the UN. Apparently, 189 countries are currently in Geneva negotiating with the World Intellectual Property Organization over how to deal with the problem of cultural appropriation. Specifically, the groups are targeting brands that look to make profit off of words, symbols, or styles that, quote, belong to the indigenous people of the world. You know, I have pretty much two points to make here. The first should be pretty obvious. Words, symbols, and styles are not owned by anyone. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing a sari, a headdress, and war paint right now. What are you going to do about it? My second point is that the United Nations, I should say, has no authority over me or what I do here in America. I didn't vote for anyone in the UN, and I do not acknowledge their authority here. A message to parents, you need to be extra cautious right now about what your children are looking at. We really don't have time to be lazy with our kids. Look at what's happened to millennials. That's what happens when you get lazy with your kids. Pay attention to what your kids are doing. Take an active role in their life. I'm not a parent, and kind of thankful that I'm not right now in this current political climate. My kid would probably be going through hell. So just be extra cautious about what your kids are looking at. These magazines, they may seem innocuous at first glance, but do not let that fool you. There is a concerted effort to radicalize children and turn them into little thought-policing socialists. Magazines like Teen Vogue, they want to bring about a dystopian-type future where your children belong to a nanny state and they monitor you like purity squads. The article that I was talking about goes on to praise the UN and touts possible jail time as punishment for cultural appropriation. Never mind the fact that cultural appropriation is 100% completely normal and natural. Let's be clear, this is not a war on cultural appropriation. This represents the ongoing battle against white folks, plain and simple. If this were actually about cultural appropriation, we'd hear about how the groups of black people that are claiming to be descendants of Egyptian kings, despite not knowing any genealogy. We'd hear about the skin lightening, the hair dyeing, and the many other myriad ways that minorities adopt cultures around them. Don't get me wrong, I do not care if someone wants to take on the attributes of another culture. In my opinion, that's what makes society move forward. We would have zero progress if different cultures didn't quote-unquote appropriate from one another. That's how society moves forward, that's how we grow, and to stifle it is really silly. The problem here comes in that only white people are getting called out for cultural appropriation. We're told we have no culture because we stole it all from other people, all while the same is literally being done to us on a daily basis. The far left that runs the media, they want you under their boot, and they really don't like white people, despite being mostly white themselves. I saw a picture earlier today, someone had posted on Facebook of Google's SJW censorship squad, basically, and it's all white women, pretty much, blue-haired, feminist, fat-looking, hideous white women, and a couple real beta-looking dudes. Questionable if they were actually dudes when they were born. It's really homogenous for somebody that keeps telling us that we have to be more diverse and everything. It's crazy. They hate white people. They've sold out their race and their integrity, I guess, to work out some kind of like Freudian guilt trip. They've enveloped themselves in this white guilt shit that I refuse to ascribe to. Every day I wake up and I read more news stories, like I'm living in a dream. The comparisons to 1984 would get old if they weren't so accurate. The fact is, Teen Vogue is a smut peddler. They're anti-American, and they're social Marxist tools of indoctrination. They want your children. Be sure of that. When the media gets together with print publications, which falls directly in line with leftist propaganda and calls for bigger government, you need to pay attention there. So, buyer beware. Caveat emptor. And speaking about Orwellian education, California schools will no longer require students to pass English or math to graduate. The argument is typical leftist bigotry of low expectations and concludes that math and English are, quote, too hard for people of color. You cannot make this shit up, guys. California Democrats are literally saying black people are too dumb to do math, so we'll just let them slide. Wow. This isn't a new phenomenon. Commie shitholes like California are inevitably going to take this to its most ridiculous end. Programs like No Child Left Behind have no value in a civilized society. We are literally sweeping ignorant people through our school system and dumping them into the workforce to fall flat on their ass. You know, there was a time, and I'm not that old, I'm only 34, but even when I was younger, jobs like fast food, retail, cashiers, things of that nature, they were for teenagers. They were for people who needed to learn what the workforce was. And it was the perfect way for a young adult to make some cash while testing out the workforce. You know, I remember when I got my first paycheck from Arby's. I was 16 years old, and when I got home after working my ass off that week, I started bawling when I realized how hard I had just worked for such a small amount of money. And that taught me a lesson. I quickly learned if I ever wanted to save money and move out of my parents' house, I would have to expand my knowledge, learn a trade, or find something of value that I can produce. You know, nowadays, though, we're not seeing that happen so much. Instead of teenagers, I increasingly see 35-year-olds with freaking Velcro shoes working these jobs for life. The workforce is saturated with these people. They're miserable, barely educated, slack-jawed mouth breathers, and they can't even put a sandwich together without staring at you with contempt. Oh, and they want $15 an hour. Now, these people don't have the mental acumen to realize how free markets work and that they're going to be replaced with kiosks that do their jobs more efficiently. And because of postmodernism, we've decimated our entire school system. We've raised a generation of weak, ignorant stock, and the only people who benefit are big government globalists. After all, why would they want critical thinkers hitting our markets? You know, the scumbags that engineer the downfall of nations, they want us stupid, drooling, and fighting each other, unable to get by without their handouts. And they're doing a damn good job at it. They've painted this entire narrative with racism. So if you question anything, you're made to look like a monster who wants poor black kids to suffer. You know, in reality, this is all coddling and hand-holding that causes minorities to suffer long term. No one wants to face the fact that all men and women are not the same. Some people are born with natural gifts, and others need to work harder to achieve standard results. We're doing a disservice to those people and society as a whole by ignoring that simple fact. It's kind of reminiscent of the movie Idiocracy. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but basically the intro clip, the movie's kind of stupid and cheesy, but the intro clip kind of sums it up nicely where it shows two separate families, one with a high IQ and one of a man named Cletus with an extremely low IQ. And the one with the low IQ keeps making babies. I'm going to fuck this woman. And his family tree becomes huge. Meanwhile, the intelligent people on the right side, they don't make any babies. They are waiting for the right time financially. One of them gets a disease, blah, 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 blah. They don't make children. Now take that and amplify it for a very long time down the future, and what happens? We end up with a bunch of idiots. We've basically incentivized stupidity and single motherhood. You know, a quick walk through any ghetto will highlight its effects on society. Don't forget that all of the ghettos you see in our country, they have been run by Democrats for a long time. So that's where things head when Democrats get in control. Smart people are making less children, and the lunatics are now running the asylum. And until our country takes a firm stance on education and starts to privatize that market, I think it's going to get worse and worse. We're going to see companies automate procedures to save money. That's just where it's going to be. It's all going to be automated. So here's hoping that our soon-to-be robot overlords go easier on us than the public education system has. ACLU in New York has recently claimed that President Trump wants to, quote, deport children based on mere suspicion of gang affiliation. This comes on the heels of a big crackdown against MS-13 gang members who have been caught committing horrendous crimes in our country. For those of you who don't know, MS-13 is a serious gang that has infiltrated our country, basically, that consists majorly of illegal immigrants. They basically prey on these people and give them it's less family-based than most gangs is what I'm reading, and it's more fear-based. Two of the criminals that were caught recently are very satanic-based. There's a lot of like ritualized killing that goes on, and I think they're based out of Venezuela, if I remember correctly. but they've been committing horrendous crimes in our country. And regarding this ACLU claim, there's been no evidence of children being detained at all. And considering their track record, the ACLU is about as trustworthy as the DNC at this point. These are the same people that believe a crackdown on them is a crackdown on all immigrants. Never mind the fact that they're here illegally, often re-entering the country multiple times while terrorizing our communities. Never mind the fact that these arrests have been adults that laugh in court while their murderous crimes are being described. They smile and wave at the cameras. Never mind the families that are never going to be whole again because of these scumbags. Screw all of that, because the ACLU thinks we should just spread our ass cheeks for foreign invaders to slide right in. The one I'm speaking of specifically, there were 3 19-year-olds and a 22-year-old. They were members of MS-13. They were recently charged with murdering 3 New York teenagers in March. Them, along with 2 others, allegedly murdered 15-year-old Nisa Mickens and 16-year-old Kayla Cueva with a machete and a baseball bat in September 2016. They were reported to have been looking for rival gangs to kill when they saw the girls walking down the street. Now, it's known that MS-13 members, they frequently recruit children who are already here illegally. An official with the FBI in New York ended up testifying before the House Homeland Security Committee Subcommittee on Counterterrorism and Intelligence, say that 3 times fast, on June 20th that MS-13 members are, quote, typically much younger than those connected to other street gangs, and that they, quote, take cues from the gang instead of relying on a productive family structure. Also, those emigrating from El Salvador to the United States are known to be exposed and already desensitized to very extreme violence at an early age, end quote. The FBI assistant director said that the gang had a propensity for, quote, gruesome violence. Let me be perfectly clear here. I don't give a shit if some teenaged illegal immigrants get deported in order to stop MS-13 from killing one more American citizen. I would gladly see every single illegal rounded up and shipped back to their homeland than have another young girl get brutally murdered. I don't care how you feel about it. These liberals are going to screw us all. They're being duped by globalists that want to alter the landscape of our nation permanently. We need to build that wall as soon as possible, and many Trump supporters want a complete moratorium on immigration until we get this whole mess sorted out, and I think rightfully so. I support our ICE agents fully. They're out there risking their lives every single day to clean up the mess that we've allowed liberals to create. People may find that cold-hearted, and I hear all the time about how these poor families are split apart. Maybe they shouldn't be split apart. Maybe we should just deport the entire family, even little abuela who uses our welfare system to send care packages back to her native country. We don't want you here, and no amount of wishy-washy feel-good rhetoric is going to change that. There was a point in time where we could have handled all of this with feelings and with words, and we could have talked this out all nicely and come to concessions. We're past that time now. People are openly saying that they're undocumented and unafraid. They're here. They're changing our damn infrastructure. They want to change our demographic, and they don't give a shit. I see an emboldened form of illegal immigrant down here in South Florida, particularly in the Miami area. There's enclaves of these generations and generations of immigrants that never assimilate whatsoever. And look what happens when we ask them to assimilate. Everyone freaks out and says that we're racist, and there's that bigotry of low expectations thing. It's retarded, and talking about it nicely and using feelings, that's not going to work anymore. We need more drastic measures to get these people out, and I'm, for one, am very thankful that President Trump has empowered ICE to actually go forward with its mission statement. How weird is that we're having to praise somebody for doing their job that we're paying them to do? That it's that out of the ordinary to have ICE deporting people, that's their entire modus. That's what they're supposed to do. And we're like, yay, ICE is deporting people. Yeah, we need to ramp it up. We need to get this wall built. It looks like things are going forward with that. I, for one, cannot wait to see it happen. Speaking of commies and immigrants, California's elected officials have gone off the deep end. Amidst talks of secession, California Attorney General Xavier Becerra is launching a preemptive legal assault against the Trump administration's promise to pull tens of billions of dollars of federal funding from sanctuary cities that do not cooperate in any enforcement against illegal aliens. To top it off, Judicial Watch just wrote a letter to California Secretary of State Alex Padilla questioning why 11 of California's 58 counties appear to be in violation of the U.S. Voter Registration Act by having more registered voters than adults over the age of 18. Now, let's not pretend that this is exactly what they wanted, because California has become a cancerous tumor on our country, and a lot of people are okay with this secession to happen. A lot of right-wingers want to see that happen just because we've given up on California. We've allowed them to go unchecked for so long that it's spreading. It's disgusting. You know, these elitists that are all orchestrating this stuff live in some of the whitest, richest zip codes in the entire country. And meanwhile, they're telling us how bigoted we are for not allowing hordes of aliens to move in, bringing crime, drugs, disease, and even worse, permanently altering the voting demographic in favor of globalism and government handouts. They tell us we should be taxed for carbon emissions while they fly private jets. They tell us Trump's wall is inhumane from behind their fortress-like mansions. It's crazy, the hypocrisy that's going on here. They want us to diversify white neighborhoods while ignoring their own. People need to wake up to the fact that these people are not ignorant to what they're doing. They know in their hearts they are better than you. You're supposed to do as they say without question, and anything that goes against that is seen as a direct assault. The same rules do not apply to these people, all right? When every single news channel pushes this narrative along with all of Hollywood, that should be a red flag. They're scumbags and they're elitists, and it's typical for the Democrats. If you look back through history, they never wanted to lose their slaves. They'll fight tooth and nail to keep Pablo the gardener and Luisa the maid in their service. They want cheap, illegal labor and subservient followers. It's really quite maniacal when you think about it. It's funny because most of these leftists that virtue signal about helping minorities have no real capacity for empathy. If they actually cared about people, they wouldn't open the gates for criminals to destroy our parks, towns, and structural systems. The only logical conclusion that there is that can come here is that there's an effort, concerted effort, to replace red-blooded Americans with state-dependent slave labor. I've heard some great arguments from conservatives that are both for and against California seceding, but personally, I refuse to give them that satisfaction of winning. If they attempt to break out of our republic, I have no problem with sending in the feds to clean out the rats that have infested it. I'm sick and tired of pandering to these idiots. They need to get the hell out of our way, or we need to just plow right through them like a crowd of BLM protesters blocking a highway. Speaking of Hollywood, too, I just saw all this craziness online about the new trailer for the Death Wish remake movie. Basically, they're calling it alt-right propaganda after seeing just the trailer. It hasn't even been released yet. A bunch of idiots took to social media to start denouncing it, and I believe it's got Bruce Willis in it. I haven't even seen the whole thing, just a little bit. But apparently something about a white man shooting criminals just doesn't sit right with the left. And you could see the same rhetoric repeated over and over. It looks like people are just copying and pasting. Angry old white man shoots minorities. An alt-right wet dream. I've literally seen that sentence in its many forms like 50 to 100 times in the last few days. You know, I originally had zero urge to see this movie. I rarely like remakes, and I'm not a big action fan. But if the director and the writers don't cave in to the PC police, I'm going to be going to give them my money in theaters. Just earlier today, I was talking with one of my friends about race relations, and now he's a classical liberal. He's open to discuss subjects like race without calling me a Nazi, which is rare these days, so I value that. And I was kind of trying to explain what I meant when I was saying that whites aren't allowed to have racial autonomy. Now, this movie, albeit a small one, is a perfect example. If Bruce Willis was black, this movie would be touted as a wonderful expression of black angst against the evil white patriarchy, instead of being labeled racist before it's even released and anyone's seen it. At least once a week, some big-name liberal news outlet pens or records a story about how a film isn't diverse enough. They're fixated on diversifying everything, but it actually means to replace white people with people of color. They don't care if the story is about Celtic herdsmen, Norse warriors, or fantasy fiction. If white people outnumber brown and black people even slightly, it must be racist. Do a quick Google image search for Europe people history. I'll wait. They don't look European, do they? Well, you're a racist bigot for even noticing. The left has done a bang-up job of equating anything white with supremacy. We're not allowed to be proud of our heritage. We aren't allowed to even point out statistics that show people of color in a negative light. Go search some of these melanin-obsessed popular YouTubers right now. There's some really foul shit being said about white people out there. Meanwhile, my videos that are about race, they all get demonetized. But videos calling for the death of white people, white slavery, don't adopt black children, white people, all this crazy stuff, calling a honky cracker, Mayo Saxon. I actually kind of like that one. I like mayonnaise. Those are all fine. Those are perfectly acceptable, and that's okay. We're told we should feel guilty for our whiteness and that we owe people of color for what a minority of some of our ancestors did a long time ago. We're told repeatedly that black and brown people, they're the ones that actually built the modern world. We actually stole it from them. But we know better than that, don't we? We're not retarded, right? I hope not. The left engages in some of the most horrific forms of racism, and they attempt to even redefine the word to make sure only whites can be guilty of it. Meanwhile, race relations seem to be getting worse. At this point, black and brown communities are so used to everyone caving to them, they're going to flip out when that changes. Schools across the country have created segregated, safe spaces where whites aren't even allowed, and this has been some of the reason that President Trump and others in his cabinet have made announcements about their funding. Every day I see more violence against conservatives and Trump supporters, and it's ignored mostly by the mainstream media. Newscasters will laugh and say, "Oh, poor white people." I'm talking about Simone there. When a group of black teens abducts and tortures a mentally challenged white boy, we all know what would happen if those roles had been reversed. We would be seeing the LA riots all over again. And the people that are orchestrating this chaos are sitting back and smiling every time you loot and burn your own communities. They don't give a shit about you. You go burn George Soros' shit. Don't burn my shit or yours. It's retarded. What is that going to do? The entire alt-right movement and its breakoffs, the alt-light, all these movements, they're a reactionary response. This is what happens when you tell a generation of people that they should feel guilty simply for their skin color. Unfortunately, I'm thinking things are going to get way worse before they get any better. It's important now, more than ever. I think it's so important to have situational awareness. You need to be aware of your surroundings. Some people do it naturally. Ever since I was a little kid, as soon as I enter somewhere, I'm already scoping the place out. That's just how my mind works. But if yours doesn't, you should probably train yourself to start getting in the habit of being really hyper-vigilant of your surroundings. And there's a lot of YouTube videos and content available online that you can find that talks about situational awareness and how to implement it and tactics to increase yours. You need to learn to protect yourself and your family. I, for one, I plan on moving to the country as soon as my lease is up down here. I'm not really sure where this is all headed, but I do feel like something is coming to a head here with race, with the left versus the right. I feel that it's going to get worse. So I, for one, plan to be prepared for it. And if you are able to, I'd get out of these nasty cities. If shit ever really hit the fan, God forbid something crazy ever did happen, like war or a natural disaster that really did something terrible to the country, you don't want to be in those cities anyway. They're already shitholes for the most part, but wait until something hits the fan, then it's going to be worse. The government has gone out of its way to dissuade people from being self-sufficient. We've seen crazy crackdowns on homesteaders, federal laws that prohibit people from gathering standing water on their own property because it's considered federal property. Like that should be an alarm to everyone. Like, why? Whenever I see a concerted effort against a group, I have to stop and question, okay, why? Where is this headed? What is the reasoning behind this? And I'll tell you why. They want you dependent in every way, shape, or form. If that electricity goes out, if the water goes out, if food supply stops coming, you need to be ready to accept FEMA rule. You need to be ready to accept martial law. You need to be ready to deal with them only to get everything you need. And you need to be a good little subservient slave. And that's not my nature. I like to be able to live without interference. I like to be able to live without having anybody else hand me things. That's something that makes America great. That's something that was the American ideal, why we came here, manifest destiny. We got to make it happen on our own. And every time the government tries to dissuade you from doing something like that, you should really double down and try and do it even better. I'm planning on next year, when my lease is up, moving to either Kentucky or Tennessee. I was actually born in Kentucky. I have some family out there. I just want to get out of the city just driving around and looking at the way people treat their community in the city, it's disgusting. No one has any pride for their community anymore. People litter and freaking junkies shooting up in the street. And, not to say there's not going to be problems when I'm out in the country. Of course there is. They're everywhere. But it's different. It's different. Here I have to see it every day, right in my face. And at least out there, there'll be some space between me and them. And a fence and a yard and a dog and a gun. Down here, I'm terrified to put a Trump sticker on my car, not because I'm afraid to speak out, obviously, look at my radio show, but I just don't want to keep getting my windows smashed in. I left a bag in my car one day. I went to my friend's house not too long ago, ran in his house for 10 minutes, came out and my window was smashed so somebody could take my bag that really didn't have anything in it at all. My stuff's been stolen from outside of my apartment building. I'm in downtown Fort Lauderdale, in between Wilton Manors, which is a really kind of middle-class gay community, and Fort Lauderdale, which is kind of a hodgepodge. And you see this stratification happen a lot in the cities, where you have really poverty-stricken people next to these like artist enclaves, next to multi-million-dollar condos and up. And it creates this, in biology it's called ecotone, when two different habitats cross over one another and are forced to interact with one another because of that crossing. It's called ecotone. But the results here from the stratification end up with people fighting nasty. Someone got robbed just down the street from my house at gunpoint the other day. It's not safe to be in big cities anymore. And I can't even imagine what it must be like in Chicago. I have a friend who's from there, and she almost comes to tears when she talks about it. She's older than me. She's in her mid-50s, and she was regaling me about how wonderful Chicago used to be, and now it looks like a war zone. And so many Democrat cities look like that, and that should be another sign to people. There's all these obvious signs, at least what seems obvious to me, as to why we need to move more conservative, more right. Smaller government, especially with this healthcare stuff. Whenever I meet somebody who really wants the government to get their hand up in healthcare and keep it there, I just have to ask them, have you ever been inside of a DMV before? You ever waited in those lines with those miserable people and freaking hot and sweaty and disjointed and people who don't do their job correctly? That's what's going to happen to our entire healthcare system if we let the government take hold of it. I'm all for limited government. They should be the only time slavery is okay is with the government. The government should be our slave. The government is our bitch. They need to do what we tell them, and they need to manage civil disputes. They need to handle the law, war, and pretty much that's about it. There's not much we really need the government for. The free private market is a beautiful thing, and it's what makes Western culture hands down better than every other single culture. So move away from that, people. Why I just don't understand it. I talk till I'm blue in the face with some of these freaking leftists. They bash government in one sentence and then cry for big government in the next. It makes no sense to me. But then again, not a lot does these days. I read a report today about a Republican donor that is suing the GOP for fraud over the Obamacare repeal failure. And a part of that suit is demanding that the GOP be held accountable for the promises they made while giving the money, or that they give the money back to the donors. And I believe the lawsuit was 2 people against the RNC. And we're going to see more of this, and I like this. I think this is a good use of our court system. No one's used to being held accountable, so they're shocked when this happens. How could you sue the GOP for this? Really, guys? Look at what John McCain just did. He barely got out of the hospital bed before he was bashing Trump. And I've seen reports where he's specifically saying that we could get rid of Obamacare, this mess. We could destroy it if only we had the House and the Senate. And then look what happened. So people are catching on to this. They're getting wise to the fact that there's a lot of people that call themselves right-wing that are really just scumbags. They're not really right-wing. They don't vote conservatively in any way. They want bigger government. They want the government to control our health care. What's Republican or conservative about that? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. These people are worse than Democrats because at least with Democrats we know what to expect. These people are calling themselves Republicans, and they're not. And we need to oust them. We need to hit them where it hurts. And in this case, I guess it would be in the wallet. So I'll keep close attention to this case and see where this is headed, because if this case does prove successful, it's going to open the door to a lot more accountability of donors and the GOP and the DNC as well. So let's keep an eye on that. I think that'll be really interesting. I read a couple interesting articles. I guess I could call them interesting. One of them said, no, I don't have to tell you I'm trans when dating you. And the other one said, so what if LGBTQIAP2 is a mouthful? Just learn it already. It's not negotiable. Okay, so let me address the trans thing first. Wow. Okay, how do I even start this? Basically, the people who are now telling us that they don't have to tell... So, okay, you meet this chick at a bar. She's got a penis. She doesn't have to tell you. This same group of people is the group of people that says things like fart rape and stare rape exist, that you don't need hands to rape anybody. You don't need to even be in the same room with somebody to rape anybody. Rape everywhere. These are the same people that are saying now they don't have to tell you which genitals they have, even though they present a certain way before they sleep with you. That's insane to me. And then these people are wondering why trans youth are getting bashed. Not to blame it all on them. Obviously, that's happened prior. But where do you think that's going to lead? No, I don't condone bashing anybody unless you're being attacked. I don't see any reason to have to bash anybody. But what do you expect when you have a dick? Someone doesn't expect that dick. Just because you've decided that your neurosis is prominent enough to change your entire body and force other people to use pronouns doesn't mean that everyone accepts that. And while it's not okay to bash somebody because of their genitals, it is still not okay to present yourself as one thing, sexually particularly, and then come off as another, and then expect somebody to just be like, okay. I keep seeing these comments on these articles too, and it makes me cringe so hard that I have to just start laughing so I don't sob hysterically. Where they're like, "Well, that's just your transphobic thinking, because men aren't the only ones with penises. Women have penises too. You're not gay if you suck a dick if it's on a woman. Duh. Like, what kind of topsy-turvy backwards shit are we going through right now? I don't understand." And this I have to read it out. I can't memorize it. LGBTQIAP2. I'm going to try and dissect this. So we got lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer. What's the other Q? Questioning. Intersex. A. What is A? Agender. I got that one. And I don't know what the P2 is. If anyone wants to enlighten me about the P2 later, I'm actually kind of curious. Why are we forced to learn this stupid, ever-growing acronym? And really, what's the point of learning it? Because I know in a week it's going to have a few more. Why don't they just put LGBT infinity sign? Because they just keep changing things. Some of these things negate one another as well. So you can be bisexual, which means that you like male and female, but you can also be pansexual or poly something or other, which means that you like all the other made up ones also. And you could be asexual or non-sexual. They're different apparently. And I think I know what the P2 thing is. I think that's two-spirit people, even though it doesn't really match. But I've been hearing a lot of talk about this two-spirit notion. I actually know a few people that identified as two-spirit before that even became a buzzword. Native American people, Indians that live down here in South Florida, that's the only reason I had ever heard that term in the first place. But it's so random and nebulous and like specific. Why are we picking this one indigenous, like what is the population of people that truly identify as two-spirit and are Native American? And also, doesn't that kind of equate the cultural appropriation they're always bitching about? Like, what right does the LGBTQ whatever community have to claim two-spirit as theirs? I mean, someone should sue them or something. I don't freaking know, man. It's insane to me. And it's a joke right now, and I'm kind of thankful for it, to be quite honest. I got really sick and tired of not ever being able to talk to any gay people because they were all scumbag Democrat idiots. And, with all of this insanity comes the awakening and the realization to the fact that this is batshit crazy. And we see more gay Republicans and conservatives coming out of the woodwork. Some of you guys listening right now, and I'm thankful for that, at least on that front. Like, I don't know what's the end game here? How, what's the end result of this LGBT alphabet soup thing? Are they going to add interspecies and pedosexual? There's this group called Heart Progress that I'm constantly on Twitter finding their new accounts and having them banned again, that want to promote pedophiles as pedosexuals. They want to have that added to the list of sexual preferences, and they believe that pedophilia is natural, and it ties into kind of this like this age dysphoria thing that we see people claiming to be trans age and I'm actually 6 years old. Yeah, in my opinion, I think you're just trying to get around kids, you sick freaking pervert. And this is the stuff that we were always having to, kind of slap conservatives on the wrist for and be like, no, it's not always about bestiality and pedophilia. Well, they're starting to look like they were a little bit correct in that assumption there. This group, Heart Progress, I actually did some research into them a while back. I got into one of their Yahoo groups, and they are funded by the same people that fund By Any Means Necessary, which is that Baum, which is that Falarca's group, which funds Antifa. They're all related. So the people who fund NAMBLA also fund Heart Progress, also fund Antifa and By Any Means Necessary. So they're all interconnected, and without delving into the world of Pizzagate conspiracy theory, it's freaky to see that. There's a group called the RWL, and that's the group that ties all of these together. And that's the Radical Workers League. And you can look them up for yourself and do your research for yourself. I highly encourage everybody to always never take anything at face value and do the damn research. It's really not that hard. We have the internet. But this group, the Radical Workers League, they're the ones that are funding all these different groups. They're kind of like the linchpin which ties them all together. And it looks, from my perspective, like there is a concerted effort to normalize pedophilia, and we see these videos popping up left and right on YouTube and all over the place, and that kind of stuff is also sending gays away from the LGBT community. Every time the LGBT community tries to embrace this, every time they kick out Jews while saying that they're diverse, or while they praise Islam while people are getting murdered in Orlando, every time that they do this, another gay person wakes up and says, what the hell am I doing in this group? No, I'm not doing this anymore. And I was one of them. I was never huge in the LGBT community, activist-wise, or anything like that, but I did have quite a few friends in that community, and I was an artist for a while, and I used that community as part of my base. And I did have quite a few friends there, but the more it went on, the more I realized this is like a cult. This is like some kind of pyramid Ponzi scheme, and we don't see any of the benefits of it. Yeah, sure, every now and then they'll throw you a bone, they'll allow gay marriage and things like that, and to push a narrative across. But when it all boils down, they're doing no good for the LGBT community. They don't give a shit about you. Just like the people that fund BLM don't give a shit about black people. Stop being stupid. Wake the hell up. You don't have to be super involved in politics to wake up and realize you're being screwed here. More and more gay people need to snap out of it. It's disheartening, to see. I'm not a self-hating gay, but I hate to see all of these gays that are like this, and I hate to be around them, and I crave some interaction with more people that are like myself. And thankfully, because of Trump, surprisingly, that's made it possible. Trump has done more for me as a gay man than any other president ever has. Speaking of Trump, Mad Maxine Waters went on The View the other day and had a little Freudian slip where she said she wanted to impeach Putin. And when she was asked about her joke about running for president, she said, quote, "I'm not running for anything except for the impeachment of Trump." She then went on to say, Mr. Trump, we are organizing, and we are organizing to bring you down. And she also called him the most deplorable person she has ever met. Somehow, I doubt that's true. This woman is bonkers. This James Brown drag queen, crack-smoking, race-baiter, and freaking idiot is really off the deep end. She's like Pelosi-level crazy, and watching them bounce around off of each other is kind of comical, except for that you realize then that people actually believe this shit. She doesn't even live in the district she's voted in at. Like, she lives in a $4+ million home on a government salary. What's going on? I know a lot of people who listen to the show watch Tucker Carlson. He did a little report on it, to which she responded that, of course, he's got to be racist, because that's the end-all say-all. And hopefully we do find out a little bit more about Mad Maxine and her little money trail, but I think it's interesting to watch her bobblehead go off every now and then. Seriously, though, each time she talks, it's like a double-edged sword. You kind of get hurt that idiots actually believe this, and it makes you feel longing for a better time, but at the same time you realize, well, maybe this time will be the one that wakes up somebody. I hope more and more people keep waking up. I saw another article. The race stuff is crazy right now. It seems to be really bad. The Star Wars actor John Boyega called out Game of Thrones for a lack of diversity. There are not enough black people in Game of Thrones, or colored people, or whatever. You don't question the book or anything. It's they never attacked the book when it came out, but the book has a clear role for every single person. Okay, I've read all of the Game of Thrones series, A Song of Ice and Fire books. The guy who writes them, George R. R. Martin, is a genius when it comes to fantasy fiction writing. His books are very detailed and involved and in-depth, to the point where he's got all of these religions, all of these groups of people, all of these hierarchies and families thought out down to the very last detail, and it's hard to find any inconsistencies. He's that good at it. All of these people are already a color in the book. When I started watching the show, I noted at how well they cast the show, at how good of a job they did at making the people match what I expected in my head from the book. Why the hell do we need to diversify that? What's the point? I don't understand. Like, how insignificant and pathetic are you if you need that kind of reinforcement of your race? Seriously. If anything has more than half white people in it, it's evil. It's got to be racist. It's got to be bad. We need to diversify it. Inject some people of color, some spice. Let's get it going. No, that's not how it works. That's not how creativity works. That's not how art works. And it all boils down to this thought policing. They don't just want to see this happening. They want to control the way you think. They want you to, when you're writing a book or when you're producing a television show, they want you to stop and say, oh, is this going to be received okay because of the black? They don't care about your creative process. They don't care about the message you have to tell. They don't care about how much hard work you put into character development and things of that nature. They just want to be appeased right now. And it's the same exact story with the students that are taking over our campuses. We've let the students run us into the ground. We act like they're fully formed adults that aren't there to get an education and learn about the world, and we let them run haywire on our campuses to the point where there's now segregated safe spaces by race, segregation by race in public schools and government-funded schools. We're allowing this to happen. These foot-stomping little freaking brats have had their way for so long that it honestly does worry me of what will happen if, we all want this to be corrected. We all want it to stop. What's going to happen when this just abruptly stops? What are these people going to do? They're going to freak out. They're like spoiled little babies, and it's an arrested development. It's like a retardation of growth that's happening mentally, and it only does negative to the entire society. You cannot keep caving to these people, and it seems like I'm picking something futile when I talk about stuff like Game of Thrones and people bashing it for not being diverse enough, but this is a barrage. This is a constant barrage from every single direction. We get this. White people, if you're white, your white privilege really, I would like to trade in my white privilege for money at this point, because I'm not getting that much out of it, and I'm getting sick of hearing about it. We can talk about real privilege, though, like if you're in the DNC, like Debbie Wasserman Schultz on Imran Iwan saying, I'd do it again. The good thing about this is I have a feeling that this investigation is going to lead to lots of new revelations about the DNC unless the people prosecuting it are all bought and sold too. And you honestly never know right now how deep this rabbit hole goes. When we found out this swamp was seriously infested, I don't think any of us really realized just how infested it is. It's bad. This Pakistani IT guy Debbie Wasserman Schultz knew he was doing something bad. He was banned from working in his offices, and she went out of her way to change his status so it wouldn't show up that she was still paying him. And she paid him up until the very end when he got arrested for trying to flee the country after sending money to unknown persons in Pakistan. What the hell is going on here? There's been rumors of her having infidelity with him. I'm not even sure if that has anything to do with it. And I've also seen some stirrings that this is in some way tied to Seth Rich and his death. And I'd be very interested to see what comes out of that. Unfortunately, all of the people that can say anything about it, actually have knowledge or are either too afraid to come out of the woodwork, or they have a gag order on them. And as soon as someone gets a gag order, it makes me want to look further at what they're not allowed to say. And that's all that does. So let's all hope that more revelations come out about the DNC, because this shit is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. We keep hearing lies from every single direction. It's like I can't get a break. And I've had to train my bullshit detector to the point where now I'm spotting things all the time, and I'm constantly questioning. And it's good to be that way, but it sucks that we have to. Like, we're told all the time that Trump is destroying our economy, that he's gonna crash the stock market, and then as soon as you point to them, well, the stock market's at like a 10-year high right now. Well, that's because of Obama. Like, what the hell? Okay, so I have a website up here that's got some of Trump's top takeaways. Within 6 months, we've had over 1 million jobs added to the economy as unemployment continues to decline. In July, consumer confidence remained at a 16-year high, and a small business owner confidence rose to a 10-year high. This month's jobs report exceeded expectations, with over 200,000 new jobs added to the economy. And today's strong job report comes on the heels of President Trump announcing a $10 billion investment in a high-tech manufacturing facility in Wisconsin. More Americans are finding work. Payroll has increased by 209,000, and that's non-farm payroll just in July alone. July 2017, Bloomberg predicted a gain of 180,000 more jobs. It's rolling in. The unemployment rate decreased from 4.4 to 4.3% in July alone. And again, overall, the economy has added 1.7 million jobs during Trump's first 6 months in office. That's a big milestone. Over 1 million new jobs in just about 6 months. So come on, guys, get it together. We have Chinese companies that are investing money to create facilities in America now instead of the other way around. We have manufacturing companies coming back to the country and choosing not to leave. And let me tell you, this is the key for a Republican to continue to shark it in the elections. You need to really pay attention to the Rust Belt. You need to pay attention to, while we're still not the minority, you need to pay attention to the white males of this country and what they want for them and their families. We got Trump into office, and more information is coming out about California's screwed up voter registration, dead people voting, illegals voting, multiple votes, people getting popped for it left and right. And while the left dances around and says, if you look into that, you're racist, we all know that Russia didn't get Trump elected. No cheating got Trump elected. We got Trump elected, and we did it so he could build us a wall, he could bring back our economy, and he could say the things that maybe we can't get away with saying, and that other presidents won't even say. Like, I was interviewing Steve, and he made a point that Obama never even said Islamic terror. He was terrified of it. He bowed to the caliphate. Like, we're facing a new time right now, and it's because of the amount of testosterone, because he's an alpha male, because he's a father figure, that the right sort of gravitated toward him and that the left really did not. Because let's face it, the only time testosterone is okay to leftists is when women are taking it to become men. So, go figure. That is about all of the news I want to handle for one day. I'm your host, Valen. Stay tuned. After the break, I'm going to be speaking with Steve Baum about his new magazine, Tape Leak, and the much-needed drive for more conservative and right-wing artists in community. So stay tuned. Keep it locked on to MAGA 1 Radio. I will be right back.
Back to Red Menace Radio. I'm your host, Valen, and today I'm speaking with Steve Baum about his magazine, Tape Leak. Steve, I want to thank you for coming on to the show. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hell yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your magazine?
Tape Leak is a kind of a counterculture zine. It's very grassroots, but at the same time kind of treating it a little more like an actual magazine in terms of distribution and advertising. And I don't consider it a overtly political magazine, but at the same time, it is expressing my own sentiments, and I put things that I like in the magazine, so it is, obviously it's going to kind of express some sort of political leanings, and we definitely don't shy away from any sort of political or subversive, offensive, politically incorrect sort of content.
No, definitely not. I mean, one of them that I saw had the Nike hijab and stuff like that on it. Pretty awesome, actually. Now, you're based down here in South Florida. Are you guys just a local magazine, or are you planning on going national? What's the status of all that?
Well, the whole idea from the beginning is just a local South Florida magazine, but one of my buddies who kind of helped me start the idea, he moved to Dallas about a year ago, and he's been doing a little bit of distribution in Dallas on a much smaller scale, so I consider that sort of like a Texas arm of Tape Leak. But no, for the most part, it is primarily a South Florida-based magazine.
Very cool, very cool. And you have drop locations at different places. I know you have one by Art Walk over in my area. Where else can people grab your magazine?
We have one, yes, at Gramps, out in front of Gramps in Wynwood. We have a zine drop box where you can pick them up. I actually just stocked them up today, so they're available. Also at Bob's Newsstand in Fort Lauderdale, there's another zine drop box where they can be picked up, and then other locations, Radioactive Records, Panther Coffee in Wynwood, Brew Urban Cafe, places like that around town, you could typically find them.
Very cool. And for any of my South Florida listeners who haven't been to Bob's News, you need to go there. It's like a landmark in South Florida. I mean, I've been buying banned books from there since I was a little kid. Really good place.
Yeah, I remember going there to buy the Anarchist Cookbook when I was a little kid, 15 years old. It was the only place, in the pre-internet days, it was the only place to find that. But yeah, they have all like banned books, unusual books, so I thought it was the perfect place to distribute Tape Leak.
Oh, definitely. And it's a landmark, too. Now, I know you're a member of Proud Boys. Do you consider yourself a conservative? Where do you fall on the political spectrum?
I'm perfectly comfortable with the term conservative. I consider myself more libertarian. I definitely, far right of center, especially, these days where, the left has just become so fucking irrational, batshit crazy that even people who are on the left are becoming pushed further and further right. So I'm perfectly comfortable there. But I'm like more of a Ron Paul libertarian. I've always considered myself.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of right-wingers coming over from that side and just kind of embracing the conservative moniker for I guess, lack of a movement. I've had a lot of friends leave the Libertarian Party because of some of the craziness going on there. What are your thoughts on the Libertarian Party, like currently?
I've never been very party affiliated, so I've attended a couple of some meetings and some lectures, but for me it's just more philosophically. I consider myself libertarian or anarcho-capitalist in a way. Where I have come to, as of recently, I've come to sort of depart from libertarianism is probably only in terms of I've become slightly more nationalist and slightly more in the belief of strong borders, which differs from a lot of the Ron Paul anarcho-capitalist libertarians. So I do kind of, in that sense, I have kind of come to depart from them. I do think that, strong borders are very important.
Definitely, definitely. Now, did you ever consider yourself a liberal?
I mean, maybe if you asked me in my early high school days, I might have gave you that answer, but back then I was pretty ignorant on politics, so I really wouldn't have known what I was talking about anyway. I'm classically liberal, I'll say that.
Sure. And I think a lot of us came over from that end of the spectrum as well. When I was younger, I was really anarchistic, and then I kind of woke up and realized, how just unfeasible that is currently. Now, have you had any blowback at all from your magazine? Have you had any feedback from the art community, anything like that?
So far, no. I look forward to it in a way.
Good.
Yeah, I'd love to. Obviously, I'm not dying for people to say negative shit about the magazine or hate on it in any sort of way. But at the same time, I guess I am sort of expecting it at some point. maybe we haven't grown to that point yet to where enough people are getting it in their hands. If it gets to that point, I would expect it. I would expect a little bit of blowback.
Yeah, maybe. How have you been received by the people that you show the magazine so far?
So far, it's been very well received. A lot of the people that, whether I know or people that I don't know who have gotten their hands on it, I've heard nothing but good things. But, it's still young. We've still got a lot of growing to do, so we'll see what happens with that.
Sure, and I predicted it will grow. There's a need for the kind of art that you're doing, and I've had a look at quite a few of them so far, and it's how I remember when I was a kid how the art community used to be, kind of subversive and underground, and now what people call subversive and underground is really just mainstream. So it's nice to see something kind of pushing against that a little bit.
Exactly.
Because let's face it, the art community is like 90% left-wingers right now, at least down here. From what I noticed.
I would agree.
So what do you think the future holds for right-wingers, for conservatives? What do you think is coming up for us? Do you think there's going to be more of a strengthening of our right-wing values, or do you think this is like an uphill battle? What do you think the future is for conservatism?
I think there will be a bit of a strengthening. You can see it now with, a lot more people being comfortable with being, with the term conservative or right-wing, although there's, it seems like the hate is stronger than it's ever been from the left. But at the same time, I'm seeing more people, disavow the term liberalism, people disavowing the term feminism, politically incorrect humor is some of the best humor ever. It's kind of, it's the source of, all good comedy in a sense. So I do see that it'll probably swing a little bit back and forth as, these things tend to do. But I do see it kind of strengthening, at least within the next, 4 to 8 years with Trump's administration. We'll see how this goes. But, as it strengthens and it grows, it could swing back the other way for all we know. That's what usually tends to happen.
Yeah, I keep stressing to everyone how important it is not to get cozy because we got a battle coming up.
Yeah.
Well, what are your thoughts on Trump? Did you vote Trump?
I did not vote Trump, actually, much to the dismay of many of my Proud Boys. I voted third party. Every time I've ever voted, I've voted Libertarian, and I'm comfortable with that. And
sure,
if Hillary would have won, I still would have been comfortable with my vote. But at the same time, on election night when Trump won, I was thrilled. Because I didn't expect him to win. Like, I thought for sure Hillary was going to win. And, I vote Libertarian. That's just, that's what I've always done. And, but when Trump won, like, I was just stoked because I didn't think that was a possibility. So I was thrilled about that.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
I voted for Trump, but I didn't think he was going to win. I thought it was going to be the same old shit, status quo, And it was quite shocking. I'll tell you what, I've never slept so good as I did that night that he won. It was really good. So what do you think the future holds for the Democratic Party? I mean, I've been seeing a lot of this disavowing as well, kind of classical liberalism breaking apart from the far left. Do you think this signifies a fracturing of the party?
I think it absolutely does. And, maybe that's exactly what they need to survive. Or if they don't survive, either way, like, sometimes the party needs to, like, kind of be fractured to kind of figure out where they stand because it's not looking so good for them lately.
No, not at all. They're losing seats when there's no elections.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me. It's all very interesting. And I've actually been talking to a few other people that have said that they think the Republican and the Democratic Party are kind of on their way out and that it's going to move more towards an independent or a new party altogether. Do you think there's any gravity to that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'd say that's probably the most likely scenario. But even still, a power vacuum will kind of create some sort of wherever the dust all settles after all this fractioning of both parties and the dissolving of both parties happen, which seems like that is what's happening. I can't exactly predict what's going to happen after that, but some sort of power vacuum, I think, will result in another. And if it becomes more independent, that's good, but I see it kind of resulting in just another bullshit, two-party system of some sort. It might not look a lot like what we have now, but...
Sure, usually the ones with the power Usually the previous ones with the power and the ones with the money kind of come on top when that power vacuum happens. So that's always, kind of like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, they're going to take advantage of that situation.
Yeah, you work in the artistic community a lot more than I do. I used to, and I kind of stepped away from that as I picked up this political thing a little more. Do you notice any more conservatives kind of coming out in the art community? Do you work with any other right-leaning artists?
I don't. I have a handful of, conservative friends, some of them that did vote for Trump, and they are in the art, graphic design and art community. What's funny is that they're very closeted about it. Like, they're not open about it, and in a way, I don't blame them, because, they don't want their social relationships to be harmed or their business to be harmed, and while part of me would just wish that they would, say, fuck that. At the same time, I totally understand where they're coming from. Some of these people you might even know, Valen, but
I was actually going to say I have a couple artists that I know we both know mutually that are pretty big in the scene down here that have written me privately asking me not to divulge their name. And if you guys are listening, your secret's safe, but we'll welcome you with open arms as soon as you're ready to come out of that closet.
Exactly. I remember when you told me when you were first thinking about doing this channel or this radio show, you were like, expressing some feelings about, I don't know, it's gonna harm my business, but I'm glad to see that you just, ultimately said, what, fuck it, this is what I'm gonna do. But while at the same time, I almost don't blame my friends for just not wanting to be so outspoken about it, because, like, you really will receive so much hate, and so much, ill will and harm, maybe even, financial harm to your business. It's unfortunate that it's like that, but I guess in a way I can't blame them.
Yeah, everybody's got a different driving force for why they become outspoken eventually, and I do think that a lot of those people that are holding back on it, something will eventually push them over, whether it's the acceptance in the community or whether it's something really extreme that happens on their leftist side. Yeah. I think that's going to draw more out of the woodwork. We'll see. Now, what are your thoughts on the alt-right community? I notice there's this huge battle going on right now and disavowing between the alt-right and the alt-light. What do you think about all of that?
Well, the alt-right is such an interesting term because, just depending on who you ask, it means a different thing. The left will say one thing, the right say another, the media says another. If we're talking about in the true terms of the word as coined by Richard Spencer, then, I want nothing to do with that. I'm not a huge fan of him, but nowadays alt-right can mean, people could call Take-Leak an alt-right magazine. I'm sure plenty of people would call me alt-right just for, the things I say on Facebook or, defending Trump once in a while, which I'll do. So I know that's more considered now alt-right. So I'm comfortable with that term, alt-right, even though it's kind of a stupid term. I think all these terms are kind of silly. But,
kind of faggy. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But, yeah, I don't know. I guess, if that's what I am, if that's what they're calling us, then sure, I'll own it.
Sure. My whole thought process behind it was, Gavin McInnes did this, big disavowing of a lot of the alt-right, and then literally within a couple of days, he ended up on the ADL watch list, on the hate list, with the same alt-right people. So I really don't think it's serving much of a purpose to disavow these people. And I get it. I totally get why you want to distance yourself, marketing reasons and stuff like that, but I've interviewed quite a few alt-right people, and I'm finding that there's not a lot of white supremacy going on there. It's just, I call it race realism, personally, and a willingness to acknowledge racial differences, things like that. It's interesting because I kind of find myself in between alt-right and alt-light, somewhere in between there. So.
Yeah, I totally understand it. I definitely get it. Did you interview these people on your show, or just?
Yeah, last week I had Johnny Benitez on, who was specifically disavowed by Gavin and everything, and he was talking about that, and it's interesting stuff. You should check it out. Now, what are your thoughts on Trump so far in office?
I'm not completely thrilled. Again, I'm still, really happy that he won instead of Hillary, and I don't think that's going to change. There's not much he could do for me.
Yeah.
I'll never to change my mind on that. But I don't know. I was hoping he'd be a little bit more like the anti-globalist that he kind of, that everybody thought he was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, it was never about the issues. Any of my reasons why I did like him before and after the election weren't really policy-based. It was just because of, the same reason I think a lot of people like him, just because, he'll say what needs to be said, where Obama wouldn't even say the word radical Islam. Trump comes straight out and said, we've got to get these fucking radical Islamists out of our country, and I respect that. I respect that a leader would say that. And I respect, a lot of the way he says things, but I can't say that, I'm not super happy with, everything he's done or said so far. But, it might be the best. It's the best we got right now.
Correct. I like to hear that. I like, one thing that some people tend to forget when they get entrenched in politics is that you need to hold your elected officials to the fire, regardless of whether they're on your side or not. They work for us. They need to be afraid of us. They need to know who's in control here, and it's the people, not them. And I think, I have to commend people that will point out Trump's issues, because he's got some legitimate issues, some legitimate problems, like you were talking about with globalism, some issues I have with nepotism, his stance in Saudi Arabia. There's some real problems, and none of them involve Russia. So as soon as the left stops,
that's not a big concern of mine. But yeah, you're right. The people who voted for him need to, in a large way, needs to be the ones to kind of hold his feet to the fire. While I didn't vote for him, you'll still find me occasionally defending him online, which loses me a lot of friends, which I could give a fuck about. But you've been involved in some of those debates. So while I didn't pick from him,
tear his family apart, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's sad.
It's sad. But I think that it's a the whole Trump phenomenon in and of itself is kind of a reactionary movement, and I think that bringing back to the PC culture, like you were talking about, and feminism and stuff like that, was a real catalyst for bringing him about. And he's an answer to those things. We need an alpha male in the office, I believe.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
What about the transgender ban? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think he needed to do that. I do understand that, from a military perspective, a lot of people in the military agree with that. Like a lot of generals and probably military advisors that he consulted. They have their reasons for it. I've heard them all, and I trust them that was the best thing to do. But at the same time, I think he could have done without doing that. It didn't gain him nothing but more enemies and more haters. Not that he gives a shit about the haters, and he shouldn't. But I don't think it did much except for just kind of gave him more controversy, which I don't think he needs.
Sure. Well, I think he's trying to, in my opinion, if you want to win as a Republican in this country, you need to make sure you get that Midwestern white working class vote. And I think that was kind of solidifying that. And you do that by appeasing the military, the police, things of that nature. And I think that's exactly what he did in this situation. And I'm all for it, personally. Like you said, I don't think that it was completely necessary at this time. We're not at war right now, but we very well may be at some point soon, and I want our military to be ready above all things.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. Some of the defense for his decision to do that are actually they're pretty sound points. Whether it's necessary to do it, that's not for me to say. I'll leave it to the generals I'll leave it to them to decide. But there are some sound arguments for why, for his reasoning to do that.
There are, and there's a marked lack of arguments in opposition, I find, that aren't just riddled with feelings and emotions and things of that nature. So, that's why if is ready to come debate that with me, they're more than welcome to come on the show and do so, but so far, none have been willing.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah. Now, so all this big wide brush has been painted over anybody that's even slightly pro-Trump or even defense of Trump as racist people. But you know as well as I do, who's into Proud Boys events and things of that nature. They're very mixed, and even a little bit more so than the left events are. I remember at that Milo Yiannopoulos event we were at, it was very diverse in a way. Do you think that the right is the new counterculture? Do you think that that's something to pay attention to? Do you think that's going to have any effect on politics in the future?
I think that's absolutely true. The right is becoming more counterculture, whether it's just terms of, just comedy in general. It's like I was saying earlier, politically correctness is the enemy of comedy. And like Gavin says, Gavin McGinnis is always saying that we become the party of fun, and I think that's so true. And we also, we are becoming kind of like the more counterculture. There's nothing more, taboo you can do than generally, like in the, mainstream culture. There's nothing more taboo you can do than to say, something in defense of Trump or in defense of right-wing, sentiments. And, there's I don't know. That's definitely true. I remember the South Park guys, Trey Parker and Matt Stone. I'm huge fans of those guys. They're some of my favorite, like, writing, you know, in terms of comedy. And they were saying back in the Bush administration how, like, they were saying there's nothing more punk rock than saying that you voted for George Bush. And this was, you know, way back in the early 2000s.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, and they were saying how, like, and they went from, like, Colorado to L.A., California, this liberal, you know, haven, where everybody they knew was just, you know, talking shit about George Bush, where they would just turn around at parties and just say, no, I like George Bush. Yeah, I voted for George Bush. Here's why. And they would just get a kick out of that, whether they were just to be trolls or what. Who knows with those guys? But it's, you know, it's that sentiment they were expressing back then has become even more true now, that like, expressing any sort of, like, right-wing, you know, values has become, there's nothing more punk rock than that in a way.
Certainly. You know, it's interesting because I was getting worried a little bit there about South Park because they were on the Trump bashing train. And then did you see that post that they made recently on
they said
Facebook,
they were gonna,
I believe?
Yeah, like they made a mistake by doing that, if they were going to stop doing that?
Yeah, for all the listeners who haven't seen it, they made a post stating that in their drive to get ratings, they jumped on the Trump bashing train, but then in retrospect, they realized that they were doing the same exact thing CNN was, and then they basically promised to step away from that, and I have mad respect for that. I think that's fucking awesome.
I think they realized, yeah, they were becoming sort of like what I was just saying, like sort of anti-comedy, but like it's the easiest joke to make, you know, like a comedian or a late-night host. Like nowadays, you tune into Conan
It's
or
lazy.
Yeah, Steve Colbert or John Oliver. Some of these people I like, but like it's just so lazy and obvious. Oh, you're gonna, you know, bash Trump. There's nothing original or even funny about that anymore. So I think they realized
it's almost like a knock-knock joke. It's so played out at this point, or you know, my arms are tired from flying here type of thing. It's like, okay, we got it. You don't like Trump. Yeah, and then there's this whole concerted effort by the media to kind of gloss over all of the bullshit that these people say, like to the point where when people get negative ratings and they're far left on Netflix, they remove the rating system for them. Yeah, they did that to Lena Dunham because a bunch of trolls basically hit up her, or I'm sorry, it was Amy Schumer.
Amy Schumer.
Dunham. Yeah, and they went on and...
I saw that comedy special I kind of hate-watched it on Netflix, but not just out of hate. I'll say out of genuine honesty, it was a fucking terrible comic show.
It's just not funny.
Yeah, it wasn't. It honestly wasn't.
No, and the things that pass for comedy these days are just kind of pathetic, and that's why, again, I want to give a platform to people that are doing things out there in the community, because with magazines like yours, that's what's going to show the younger generation where to go, what to look at, and people are drawn to that kind of resistance energy. A lot of people that I've spoken with came over to the right side from the Occupy movement, and I think that fulfills a sort of need to resist the mainstream. And as soon as Generation Z, as soon as these kids catch on that the mainstream is the Democrats, that the mainstream is these establishment Republicans, the GOP, and we'll have a lot more people, I believe, on our side in the next 10 years. So I'm looking forward to that, so keep up that good work.
Now, if people look at the magazine that way, that's fucking great to me. I think that's a good thing.
Definitely. You know, and I've always enjoyed your artwork, so it's good to see that that you're doing something that's affecting the political sphere with it as well. So props for that. Now, how can my listeners find you online? Do you have a Facebook page or anything?
We have a Facebook page. We also have an Instagram page you could follow. Unfortunately, we don't have a website yet. We are going to get one up eventually. You know, everybody's telling me, oh, you got to go digital with the magazine. You got to go digital with it, which eventually we might. But I think to me it's important I want it to be a print-only magazine, at least for now. Like, for you to enjoy the magazine, you have to actually get one in your hands. But I still would like to get a website up eventually where people can kind of like learn about it, maybe preview some of the magazines, and maybe even have a forum on there where people can kind of discuss things.
Sure. And do you accept submissions for your magazine?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, largely that's where a good amount of our content comes from is from submissions from people. So, yeah, if anybody wants to submit some stuff, definitely looking for writers more than anything, but, you know, even artists or whoever, you can definitely contact us. Right now, I'd say the Facebook page, unfortunately, is the best way to contact us for now.
Okay, no problem, and I will share that for all my listeners. That will be on the Red Menace Radio page as well as on my YouTube when I upload the archive of this audio. What you were saying before about not putting it digital, I think that's actually a great idea. Marketing-wise, when Red Bull first released their drinks, and you know how big Red Bull is as a company, they're huge. They're not just energy drinks. They do events, music sponsorships, all kinds of things like that. When Red Bull first hit the scene, they purposefully did not release their product in the big cities. They only released their product on the outskirts of towns near big cities. So by the time that people were ready for this drink that they had to go out of town to get, it hit like wildfire. So I think that the strategy that you're doing is good.
Yeah, so maybe by the time we do go digital, hopefully it'll blow up in some sort of way.
Yeah, exactly. Now, how often does your magazine come out?
We started this year as a monthly magazine in January, and we did that for 6 months, and we just now, with this most recent issue, this month, we decided to go bi-monthly. So that's going to make it a lot easier for me to, kind of spend more time putting quality content in the magazine, and also spend a lot more time, doing the things I wasn't able to do as far as, like, promotion, distribution, and look for some advertisers. And, a monthly issue was a little too ambitious for us, I realized, because as soon as one issue would come out, I'd have to immediately start working on the next issue and contact everybody, put it together, get it printed, and that went on for 6 months, and it left me with very little time to do much else. So, yeah, we've moved to a bi-monthly magazine. This month, August, is issue 8 just came out, so we'll have 2 more until the end of this year.
Very cool. I would love to see something happen down here in the art community where I can at least go to one art event that is, got the type of art that I want to look at right now, that has some real political messages and that aren't afraid to do that. Do you know anybody who's got anything in the works? Any plans coming up for any type of art shows or anything like that?
Unfortunately, I don't. We're planning something for Art Basel. I would like to do a Tape Leak pop-up shop somewhere. I'm going to talk to possibly at Gramps, but I haven't found a venue yet, where we're going to have back issues of all the old issues you'll be able to pick up, and as well as maybe some T-shirts and other promotional things. But as far as other people, I can't say that I've had my ear to the ground, in terms of good art shows. There seems to be a lack of that around here.
Yeah, there sure is. And there's this need in the right-wing, the alt-right, alt-light, libertarian community for artistic release. There's this need for it. I had someone on a couple weeks ago who's a science fiction writer who kind of writes these dystopian novels that are like giant space epics about what would happen if we continued along this path. And
I heard that. I listened to that one.
Yeah, more stuff like that needs to happen if we ever want to keep this movement going beyond just a quick flare-up and then die down. I think we're going to need to, the left has infiltrated the hell out of Hollywood media, everything like that. So we need to start getting our own in there. And there's tons of us. Like you said, there's artists out there already right now that are working in the community that just aren't out about their political beliefs.
Yeah, I'd like to contact what's his name, Shabo in L.A. He's a conservative street artist. He did a lot of those bus benches, those Trump bus benches, bashing Hillary. I think he also did some bashing Amy Schumer, and they're hilarious. I'd like to contact them, see if he might want to, contribute to the magazine. But even if he doesn't, he's somebody who's kind of like unabashedly, just kind of, doing that.
Yeah. Now, have you like personally, when I started being more vocal about my politics and my beliefs online particularly, I lost a good 50% of my friends list. I mean, I've had people over decades friendship just stop talking to me entirely, now call me a Nazi. Have you had anything like that happen to you?
Yeah, I have. For the most part, people don't bother to say anything, which is, that's whatever to me. I just kind of like slowly over time noticed that like I haven't heard from this person in a while, or they just completely disappear from my, from my Facebook or whatever. And, it's whatever. But I also have had other people just straight outright, come out and say, all right, well, you're deleted, I'm deleting you, enough of this bullshit. And these are, like you said, these are people that I've known for like 10 years who are good friends of mine. It's like, dude, it's me here. Steve you're talking to. Like, if you want to have some issues with me, let's talk about it, either in public or private. But for you to just not even, like, question anything about it and just say, we're done, I'm deleting you or I'm blocking you, like, that's so, I can't respect that in any sort of way. So it's just kind of good riddance,
That's how I feel about it. And you know what? And I think I was talking with you a little bit about at the Milo event. I've made so many new friends just talking about politics and being open and honest. And I was completely wrong about the right wings, about conservatives. You know, I was raised, my mom's gay, I'm gay. I grew up thinking conservatives hated my guts, and damn if I wasn't completely wrong about that. Yeah. And that's something that the left hasn't been able to adopt yet, is the ability to look past politics into the content of character. Yeah, and that's a big problem.
I think you're a lot more likely to find that on the right nowadays. I don't know if it's always been like that, but nowadays, like, you're a lot more likely to find, you know, more accepting, you know, viewpoints from the right. They might not agree with everything you say or your lifestyle or this or that, but they won't be, you know, they won't just completely, you know,
yeah, they're not
disregard you as a friend or a human being, which I found
Yeah, when on the other side of that coin, you know, my show's not even that big. I'm still relatively new to all this, not that huge. I still get death threats at least once a week. Like, I know where you live in Fort Lauderdale, and I'm going to come slit your fucking throat. Like, shit like that happens at least one time a week. To the point where I have, like, ammo stockpiled now. Come on, do it. If you want to fucking do it, let's do it.
Good for you.
So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, luckily I haven't experienced anything that severe. But just, you know, old quote-unquote friends that are just, like, completely, you know, irrationally, you know, disregarding you as a decent person or as a friend. You know, I don't get hurt feelings over it. It's just like I said, it's just, all right, if that's how you are, then, you know, you probably weren't, you know, you weren't worth much as a friend anyway, so it's no sweat off my back.
Well, you know, and I think the reason that you haven't had much blowback yet isn't because you haven't gotten big yet, is because you have tapped that real, truly subversive energy there, and to be subversive is not to be overt. And so at first glance of your magazine, you would think it's just an art magazine. You wouldn't get that until if you know what you're looking for and you look into it, you start to see there's kind of like little hidden gems in there.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I would
like that.
Yeah, if I picked up the magazine, if it wasn't my magazine, I was just somebody who picked it up, I think I would get that same feeling, and for that reason, I would like it. I hope that other people kind of get the same sentiment. Or even if you don't like all the other, you know, if you don't like everything you see in it, I hope that, you know, people at least find something in it that they can, you know, respect.
Yeah, hell yeah, definitely. I encourage all of my listeners to go out and find a copy of Tape Leak. If you haven't been able to, or if you're not in Florida or Dallas, you can hit me up and maybe I'll slide you one on a DL. And I want to thank you so much, Steve, for coming on. We're going to wrap the show, and is there anything else you want to say to the listeners out here?
No, that's about it. I'll just, you know, plug one more time, Facebook.com. You can find us, Tape Leak, and also on Instagram. Facebook's a good way to contact us if you have any submissions. And that's about it, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and again, to my listeners, I will be sharing all of those links on my Facebook, on my YouTube, and wherever else I can blast them, because I think more people need to be doing exactly what Steve and his buddies are doing here. Thanks again so much, everyone. Stay tuned after the break. I'll be back for my closing segment.
Welcome back to Red Menace Radio. I'm your host, Valen, and that was a great interview. I'm sure you guys will agree. I wanted to quickly give you the Facebook page link for Tape Leak magazine if you wanted to check it out. It is pretty easy to find, facebook.com/Tape Leak. And for my final segment, I wanted to talk a little bit about the future for the Republican and Democrat Party, and whether or not, you know, there's any future in it, or whether we're going to all have to kind of move over to something more independent. And again, I'm reserving the final outcome of all of this for when the midterms happen. I think that's going to have a big impact on everything, and we're seeing people like Kid Rock start to run, and he's polling incredibly well in pre-polls. So hopefully there is a future for both parties. I'm fine with the two-party system here. I don't have an issue with it. The left has just gone way off the deep end, and we're seeing a lot more, you know, traditional classical style liberals come out of the woodwork and stop identifying as a Democrat, or at least they still identify as a Democrat, but they make sure that they let you know that they don't go into this SJW Russia scheming madness. The majority of the left, however, does fall into that category, and my prediction is if they keep this up, they're never going to see another seat again. They need to really get off of this Russia train really quick. In the process of trying to prove Trump is a criminal with Russia, they're going to just end up exposing some of the corruption that's happened within the DNC, and whether or not people pay attention to that is another story entirely. But it will be exposed. The information typically does come out, and some of us will be reporting on it and paying attention to it. If the Democrats really wanted to shark it and try and be smart, they would jump away from the Russia stuff and focus on fiscal policy combined with maybe an environmental ticket. And when I was speaking with Johnny Benitez last week, he had made the point that if the right really wanted to, we could kind of co-opt that environmentalist movement on the basis of immigration on one front and how negatively immigration impacts the country. Not only are national parks and monuments and things like that get destroyed, they're finding like pot fields getting built out in these places by cartels where the police, and this is on American soil, where they're basically telling you don't step foot over there, or, we're not going to be able to do much for you. There's a lot of lawlessness that leads to environmental destruction, and it's a fact that about 10, 15 years ago, all the people that were heavy environmentalists, they acknowledged the fact that immigration, particularly illegal immigration, had such a negative impact on our ecosystem, on the culture, on everything, but particularly environment. And something happened, I forget the name of the group specifically, but they were going bankrupt, and they got a donation from a billionaire, and one of the caveats to that donation was that you have to drop the immigration thing, and then you can keep going. So here we are. With a little bit of clever wording and marketing and grassroots organization, we could, in fact, start to co-opt an environmental ticket. And we might have to, because we might have to take some kind of stance on it. A lot of us are not convinced that global warming is man-made, and some of us aren't convinced global warming is happening in the first place. I do notice changes in the weather and stuff like that, but do I believe it's being caused by man? No, I don't. I believe that there are natural fluctuations that happen with weather throughout the entire planet, and that we're witnessing one of those fluctuations right now. And, history would agree with me, science would agree with me, and a lot of people on the left are really quick to call science into question here and say that we're the group that's anti-science because we don't acknowledge that man-made global warming is an actual thing. All the scientists who try and speak up on it, they're shut down immediately. And global warming stuff is still a theory. It has not been proven indefinitely, let alone that man is causing it. I think it's kind of big-headed of us to think that we could impact it that much. There's only so much carbon we can release into the air, and considering the history of the entire planet from the Pleistocene era, all of the time when there was so much more carbon, the Earth adjusts. The Earth fixes itself. The Earth knows what to do and handles it just fine. People forget that human span is just a little blip on this whole thing, and I find it really funny that the left has any nerve to tell anybody that they're science deniers while they're claiming that there's like an unlimited number of magic genders that you can just slide your way into. So I think back to my point, if the left wanted to actually try and run and maybe have some type of success, they would go with an environmental ticket, and they're going to hit all the youngsters and all the Bernie types with promises of free stuff that isn't actually free, and we could do that in a whole other segment on why that's the case. For the right, again, we need to stop infighting between ourselves. We need to get some more cohesion. There's a lot of little mini splintered groups in the right that kind of fight amidst one another, and we need to really cut that out as much as we can. Never be afraid to call somebody out when they're making, an ass of themselves. Of course not. But we don't need to punch right all the time. That we have plenty of enemies on the left. And I think Trump is on the path to re-election right now. Getting that wall started and having it kind of pending in between elections is not a bad idea because we want to see him finish it. So that's not stupid there. And bringing the Rust Belt back into the fray, getting manufacturing jobs going, really honing in that nationalist energy that got everybody on board with him in the first place is where he's going to find the most success. And, his supporters, we appreciate that he doesn't pander to the left. We appreciate that when he can't get his message across through media, he hits Twitter. We all appreciate that. So when it comes to Trump, I say stay the course. I have issues with Trump, like I said in the interview prior. Some of the few issues I have are things like nepotism. I didn't vote for his family members to go in there and have any influence whatsoever, and that's something I criticized the Clintons for, and I'm not going to hold anyone to a different standard. Also, I get really uneasy with the amount of GOP Republicans that had Trump's ear before. I think that's kind of waning now, since McCain kind of did his nasty thing. I think that's waning a little bit, but it concerns me because some of them are really warmongers, and while I see the need for intervention in certain circumstances, by all means, I see that as a last resort. And I think most of us, at least in my age bracket, somewhere between millennial and Gen X, that they feel the same exact way. We don't want useless wars. However, I'm not referring to North Korea. I think we need to go over to North Korea and straighten some stuff out over there. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to. So yeah, I think if Trump wants to be reelected, he needs to stay the course. He's doing good right now. I don't like his stances with Saudi Arabia. I wish he would go a little harder with them. But honestly, my criticisms of his are really not that much. I don't really have that many. I trust the people he has appointed that he's appointed directly, that work directly with him. I trust his judgment on that. I trust how he's given the military, the ability to do what they are supposed to do. I like how he supports our law enforcement, and I think those are the paths. Like, do you remember how Obama was with law enforcement? He caused more strife and race problems than I've ever seen in my adult life, with particularly the police and the black community. And he would go on and perpetuate these hands up, don't shoot myth, and talk about how that kid who just got shot by the officer could have been my son. And, it fails to mention that kid who just got shot by an officer just robbed the store prior to that and resisted arrest. And all of this to point a gun at a cop. It's really comforting to see our commander-in-chief doing lip service and action to our men in blue and our military. So I think that he's doing really good. I think he's going to get reelected. Again, try not to let the media get you down when it comes to approval ratings and polls. It's hard not to because they're everywhere and people, squawk it back at you like a parrot. But the truth is that these same pollsters are the ones that told us Hillary would win by like a 90-something% landslide. That didn't happen. That didn't happen at all, and the more we find out, she probably didn't win the popular vote either. We were all kind of suspecting that, and that's the truth, in my opinion. So don't worry about these damn polls. They're not doing it right. They're all skewed. If you look at their sampling data, they sample a disproportionate amount of Democrats. The area that they sample, there's so many variables that are involved in polling. When you have an interest that is paying for the poll, it's always going to be skewed. Who benefits? Key bono. Where's the money trickle to? Always you can find out which direction it's going to skew by looking at who's throwing the most money at it. They wouldn't throw the most money at it if it wasn't going to be beneficial to them. So we're the silent majority here, and that hasn't changed yet. It's not, we're on our way out as a race, and Republicans, they would have us believe we're few and far between, but that's not the case. There's a lot of us. We're the hard workers in this country. We're the ones that don't need to go out and burn down buildings and loot things when we don't get our way. That's the left, and that's the only reason they seem like there are more of them than there are us, is because they're the vocal minority. They're out there breaking things and being the loudest, and just because you're screaming things at the top of your lungs doesn't make you right, and any logical person knows that. So just try not to let these polls get you too down. Again, I think the midterms are going to have a huge impact on my predictions for where both parties are going to be headed. Hopefully, we see a removal and replacement of some of these never-Trumpers and a lot of these kooky Democrats with people that, I would rather have a traditional liberal than another McCain type. I know what I'm going to get with them. I know how to work with them. And the traditional liberals are more okay with dialogue. They're more okay with nonpartisan issues, meeting halfway. So I think one of the key points is to pay attention to people's voting records, pay attention to what they're saying, and most importantly, pay attention to what they're doing. And for every one of my listeners, for everyone that I interact with, I cannot stress the importance of getting the hell out there and voting for the midterms. It's very important that we shake it up a little bit. We need to get Congress and Senate, we need to get these institutions cleansed. We need to clean them out of the rats that are in there, and that's the only way that we're actually going to be able to see some headway, because there is no reason right now that Republicans shouldn't be able to get everyone appointed, get a bill passed, all of these things. All this obstruction should not be happening while we hold this much power in the country, and it's going to be wasted if we don't take advantage of it. So for those of you that are not afraid to speak out about your political beliefs and who aren't at risk of losing their job over it or losing a bunch of things over it, people who can, please get out and speak to people. You'll find that talking around the community, talking with people, everyone wants to talk about politics right now. It's being pushed down their throats from every mainstream media outlet, from print to TV to radio to everything else. They want to talk about it. They want to be involved in it. And the more and more people we can wake up and find common ground with, maybe we can actually get some of the things that Trump is trying to do done. And, we got to get these courts in check. All of this obstruction is going to be the death of the country. And I always say this, the far left, they're perfectly happy to rule over a pile of ashes. They're perfectly happy to destroy this beautiful country that our ancestors worked so hard and fought and died to build, just so they can be on top again. And I've also said this before, that as we get closer to midterms, and even just after midterms, we might see an increase in political violence and things like terrorism from the left and things of that nature. Something like the Scalise shooting. I feel that might happen because, again, they're a cornered animal right now, and they are grasping for whatever power they can get. For us on the right, now's the time to strike hard. Strike hard. Do not get lazy. Do not get complacent. Do not get comfortable. Get motivated. I don't know about you, but every time I turn on, I do watch CNN occasionally. I can't help to, because when I'm at my dad's house, he watches it just to bother me. But when I do, it fuels me. It reminds me of why I need to continue to do what I'm doing. Even if I only have a handful of listeners, I don't care. We need to do something. Do whatever you can to make this country great again, and at least then we can sleep well at night and know that we tried. So that's about all the time I have for the show today. I want to thank all my listeners, and a really big thanks to Steve Baum for coming on to speak with us. Really appreciate that. Make sure you get your butts over to Facebook and like MAGA 1 Radio, and as well go to facebook.com/tape leak and go check out Steve's magazine. He's doing some really good stuff on the ground, and more people need to start doing that. I am here every Sunday, 7 to 9, same time, same place, on MAGA1Radio.net. Definitely tune in. Check out Red Menace Radio, where I battle hypocrisy and expose the social Marxist agenda. Hope you all take care of each other out there, and have a great week.